You know, we're in a race against time, but our opponent isn't a clock. It's the very technology we've created. Today, we're diving into a concept that sounds like it's straight out of science fiction, but it has incredibly real consequences for all of us, right now. The dizzying speed of progress and our struggle to even keep up. So let's just kick things off with a massive question. What happens if technological growth accelerates so fast, so completely, that it fundamentally escapes our control? This one idea, it's at the absolute heart of everything we're about to explore. And to really wrap our heads around this, we've got to dive into the ultimate version of that idea, a concept that isn't just theory anymore. It's being seriously debated by some of the smartest people on the planet. It has a name, the technological singularity. And look, we're not just talking about getting faster smartphones here. This is a hypothetical point in time where progress becomes so rapid, so profound, it would be a complete rupture in the fabric of human history. Everything would change. So what's the engine driving this whole thing? It's a concept called an intelligence explosion. Picture this. You build an AI that's not just smart, but it's smart enough to improve its own intelligence. Okay, so that new, smarter version then improves itself again, but even faster. It's this recursive runaway feedback loop, a literal chain reaction of intelligence that just explodes exponentially. The mathematician I.J. Good nailed this way back in 1965. He said, "The first ultra-intelligent machine is the last invention that man need ever make." Just let that sink in for a second. We could create a thing that would then handle all future invention, leaving humanity, well, somewhere else entirely. Okay, but is this whole explosion thing a sure bet? Is it really inevitable? Well, that's where things get really interesting because that one question has sparked this huge, intense debate among the world's top technologists, scientists, and philosophers. So the whole debate really boils down to two very different ways of seeing the world. On one side, you have the proponents. They point to things we've already seen, like the exponential growth of Moore's law, and they argue that a seed AI could totally kickstart that recursive self-improvement we talked about. But then, on the other side, the critics are like, hold on a second. They argue that technology usually follows an S-curve. It grows fast at first, but then it naturally slows down. They point to something called the complexity break. Basically, the more we know, the harder it is to find the next big breakthrough. So, for the people who do think it's coming, the big question is when? And the answers are all over the map, but they're also kind of close. Werner Ving, the sci-fi author who really popularized the idea, thought it could be as early as 2030. The famous futurist Ray Kurzweil pinpointed the year 2045. And if you pull AI researchers, the median prediction for human-level AI is somewhere between 2040 and 2050. The point is, for a lot of people, this isn't some distant, far-off fantasy. It's something that can happen in our lifetimes. But after all that, what if debating if and when the singularity will happen totally misses the point? What if the real problem isn't some hypothetical future, but something that's already here? Because here's the absolute key. Whether or not a true superintelligence ever shows up, we are already living in a world of exponential change. The fundamental problem, how do we govern technology that moves way faster than we do? That's not a future hypothetical. It is happening right now, today. And that right there, that's what brings us to what a lot of experts are calling the pacing problem. And it's a challenge that touches everything, from AI safety and social media to biotech and, well, pretty much everything else. The pacing problem is, well, it's pretty much what it sounds like. It's this growing, widening chasm between how fast technology evolves and how fast our laws, our ethics, and our social norms can adapt. Innovation is sprinting, while governance is barely walking. The writer Stuart Brand had this really powerful and kind of brutal way of putting it. He said, if our systems of governance can't keep pace with the technological steamroller, they don't just fall behind, they get flattened. You're either part of the steamroller or you're part of the road. So you gotta ask, why is this gap getting bigger? Why is it becoming more of a problem? It's not just that tech is getting faster, it's that the very nature of our technology has fundamentally changed. I mean, think back to the industrial age. Technologies like the railroad or the car, it took decades for them to become widespread. They were physical, they were tangible, and you could kind of predict their effects. That gave regulators time. Now, fast forward to today, to our informational intelligence age, it's a whole different ballgame. New tech is abstract, it's digital, and it can go global in a matter of months. It's constantly changing shape, it's unpredictable, and that makes it an absolute nightmare to try and govern. This creates a scenario you could call the shapeshifter nightmare. By the time lawmakers finally get around to drafting rules for a new technology, let's say an early version of a social media app or a new AI model, that technology has already morphed into something completely different. And those brand new rules, they're basically obsolete the second they're written. And hey, it's not just the tech that's the problem. Our own systems for governing are struggling too. We end up with what some people call a kludgeocracy, just a messy patchwork of quick fixes slapped onto old laws. We get ossification, where the whole process becomes so slow and rigid because everyone's afraid of lawsuits that nothing ever gets done. And then, of course, there's just good old-fashioned bureaucratic inertia, a built-in resistance to change. So this brings us to the million-dollar question, right? How in the world do we even begin to govern this accelerating world? How do we learn to actually steer this thing instead of just getting run over by it? The whole challenge is captured perfectly by something called the Calling Ridge dilemma. It's this perfect catch-22 that regulators are stuck in. See, when a technology is brand new, we don't know enough about its harms to regulate it properly. But by the time we do know enough, it's already so deeply woven into our society and our economy that it's become too big to control. You either have to act too early when you have no information, or you act too late when you have no power. And that brings us to what is maybe the most important takeaway from all of this. The singularity, this idea of a superintelligence, that's a potential future. It's a hypothetical. But the pacing problem, that gap between innovation and our ability to manage it, that is a definite present. It's the challenge of our time, and it's happening right now. So I'll leave you with this final thought, circling all the way back to the beginning. The forces of accelerating change are here, they're real, and that steamroller is moving faster every single day. The defining question for us, for our generation, is this: how do we learn to steer it before we all become part of the road?